You know, for the longest time, I still wonder if there's a way we can send out a bullet hell that rivals EX modes. I know Nagato has a pretty solid barrage, but how could I... What's that noise? Alright, I had too much fun with those three together, what can you expect? Anyway, today we're looking at a unique group of backliners called monitors, and who better to start with than the spooky duo from the Royal Navy, Erebus and her sister Terror. Nonetheless, can these two girls stand out among the many backliners the Royal Navy offers? Well, let's take a look. First things first, let's start off by saying that monitors work differently from battleships and battle cruisers. They are the grandfathers of battleships after all, so they do have some drawbacks considering their prime was long ago. Anyway, monitors were well known for their guns and sheer firepower in the past, and also for not being particularly durable or speedy. Well, let's see how that translates over to Azur and the modern day arsenals. Now, both of them are nearly identical in stat line, which is easier for comparison against other ships. I think for this particular case, we'll look at Queen Elizabeth for our comparison. As one of the elite rarity ships, Queen Elizabeth does see some usage due to her support skill she has that buffs HMS fleets. However, she isn't exactly known for her damage compared to other battleships within the HMS arsenal. Nonetheless, she'll give us a look at things from the battleship side, especially at the elite rarity. Kicking it off with survival, Erebus and Terror have a really low health pool of around 3000 at level 100, which is considerably low when compared to Queen Elizabeth's 6000. Combined with their light armor, they can face some serious issues if they come under fire. However, their high evasion could give them a better chance at dodging attacks, much better than Queen Elizabeth. Granted, sure, I guess the difference isn't exactly that huge, but it still is enough that it could have a bit of an impact. Lastly, Erebus and Terror's anti-air stat is low, to the point that even some of the Sakura Empire backliners could actually beat them. This will mean that they will take a decent damage from air-based attacks, so some considerable air defense really should be looked into. You know, times like these may call for desperate measures, right, you three? Now, in terms of offense, both of them do lose to Queen Elizabeth in firepower, and by a considerable amount as well. Considering their reloads to be identical, their overall damage output will be dependent on equipment and the overall firepower it brings. Speaking of equipment, both Erebus and Terror have a main gun efficiency at 120%, which is a tad bit lower from Queen Elizabeth's 130%. They do sit at below the average, so a good number of battleships will outdamage them completely. Now, their secondary gun is a DD gun, so it might have some issues with hitting its targets due to range. However, it does sit at the average efficiency of 200%. Their anti-air guns also sit at the average efficiency of 100% as well. The last thing I do want to mention is that they get 1 extra main gun mount and 2 extra secondary gun mounts, unlike battleships that get the other way around. These limit break upgrades will hurt them a little with their damage output, since their main gun damage is usually where most of the damage is coming from in the first place. Now, some of you may be saying, they're glass cannons and there's better options that could work instead of them, so why? Why use them in the first place? Now, the Royal Navy has a solid roster of backliners to work with, from one-shot wonders, soft landing, the 2-for-1 Hood, and even why would I want to use them? What good reason would anyone have to be using them? Well, to answer this, we'll look into one particular area: low-cost fleets. I know, me talking about low-cost fleets is a joke in itself, right? Anyway, both Erebus and Terror have a cost of 10 oil a fight at max limit break. This difference with Queen Elizabeth can mean a lot to those of you who really like to use cheaper fleets. But the real kicker comes at limit break 0. Both Erebus and Terror can hold a cost of 3 or 4 oil per fight, depending on level. The cost of a Vanguard member, but with significantly higher firepower. With proper equipment and a pretty decent Vanguard as well, they could get pretty far in the game with that setup. This is a very good argument for those looking for solid low-cost fleets to work with and take them as far as they can. Just make sure you bring some solid frontline presence to handle ships, and maybe someone like San Diego can really help out with the air threats. Nonetheless, addressing them for what they are as monitors, it shows that they are following a glass cannon build. At level 120, we do see some decent jumps to their stats. Their health and evasion jumps will definitely give them an advantage in survival, while the firepower boosts do also help them get a bit more damage output, but unfortunately with how frail they are, they can still easily be taken out. So one should exercise extreme caution when fielding them for combat. Now, they are definitely weaker than battleships, that's for sure, but the cost they carry can make a difference when farming. I mentioned this a while back when I was talking about Furutaka and Kako versus Takao. Much like Furutaka and Kako are to Takao, Erebus and Terror are definitely downgrades compared to their battleship equivalents. But the trade of oil cost per battle might incentivize one to use them regardless of what limit break they are. On a side note, maybe I don't know the history around them, but why does Erebus have such a drastic difference in luck compared to Terror? For those of you who don't necessarily know this either, luck does have some pretty important factors that comes into combat as well. Those with a much higher luck will have a better chance to hit their targets, a better chance to dodge attacks, and a better overall chance to also crit. So that might be something to take into effect if you're only wanting to tag one of them along with you. Anyway, is oil cost the only thing that they're known for? Well, let's take a look at their lone skill, Infinite Darkness. This skill gives them both up to a 60% chance to fire a barrage every 20 seconds. The overall damage of the barrage is based on the skill's level. Now, the barrage itself isn't bad at all. The pattern is pretty solid and is able to clean up enemies on the screen that it hits. It's actually really good when you have both of them procced together, as they'll both pretty much wipe a lot of enemies out with it. As you saw earlier, you can combine them with Nagato and man, does it get real crazy. I can't even begin to imagine or even describe how good it feels to be able to send an absurd amount of shell spam at enemies, since we're usually the ones on the receiving end of it. Now, do keep in mind there is a lot of RNG coming into play for this. To give you an idea as to how much this plays out probability-wise, well, here's some math. Overall, they aren't bad ships to work with if you're looking for characters to help with farming. While they may not be particularly better than battleships in the damage department, it is very difficult to really rival them when it comes to cost. As mentioned plenty already, one should seriously make sure that they are protected, as they are extremely frail and can be taken out rather quickly. Now, the last question comes down to whether or not to use them for mob or boss fleet backline. In all honesty, I don't recommend them for boss backline, as their survivability is a huge risk for those fights. It is very much possible that the boss could take them out almost instantly, crippling your fleet's damage output immediately right off the bat. Now, as for mob fleets, I think they're perfectly fine to work with there. Their barrage allows them to do some pretty nice cleanups when they proc them, and their damage output is still relatively solid. Plus, the oil cost does kind of come into play, especially when you have to do 5 or 6, maybe even 7 fights per map. Just make sure, like I said before, you do protect those two. They will really need it. While they won't outperform battleships, they will be just the right thing if you want cheaper fleets to work with. Now, as for PvP, I think the best way to answer this would be... And that is going to be all for our lovely monitor duo. Hope you enjoyed the video and that it will help you in your future endeavors. Next up will be Shinono, so look forward to that video soon. I do have a running list that I do try to keep updated, a link is in the description below, but if there's a ship girl you'd like me to take a look at and review, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Whether you're a regular viewer or a patron supporting the channel on Patreon, thanks for watching and I hope to see you all again real soon.
きます。本気でいきます。